So go ahead, why don't you just tell us in your own words at your own pace.
Well, the whole day was unusually warm and humid, kind of oppressive, and I felt rather uneasy for some reason.
Sure.
And I don't know why, but I had to go to the dentist. My parents live in Zeeland. I still went to the dentist in Zeeland, and I left my 2 children there, Came home, and but around supper time, we had just finished supper, and it was lightning and thundering, and I would get up and look out, and my husband said, "Don't do that." He said, "That makes the children uneasy and nervous and afraid of storms." And I said, "Well, I did hear something on the radio on the way home in the car about tornado warnings." And I said, it just bothered me, But then I came to Michigan when I was just about 16.
Okay.
And I had lived in Iowa. And when I was 14, I saw what a storm did just a couple miles north of us, where there were straws in trees and mattresses up in trees and just total devastation.
Sure.
So I knew what that was, and I was kind of uneasy.
Sure.
But then when our electricity, my dad often said though, when the lightning and the thunder start, it's broke, and then you won't have a tornado. And I remember going into fruit cellars and things,
Sure.
those caves and so forth. So that kind of relieved me.
Sure.
But then we heard it was like a train, and it almost sounded like it was coming through our house, and it was across the street, and then back of the neighbor's house. Not really back of their house, alongside of it, but a little further back than their house. And it was just a whirling black thing, and then I saw it move toward us. So then I knew it was a tornado, and he said, "Grab the children," and we laid under the kitchen table. I wanted to run out, but he said, "You can't outrun that." And he really didn't know very much about tornadoes, because he had said, "Don't worry, there's not tornadoes in Michigan."
Sure. A lot of people thought that.
But he had been in the South Pacific during the war, and he said, "Get under the table, get under something," because he'd seen those typhoons and things.
Sure. Now, do you remember what your address was, per chance? If you don't, that's okay.
I don't.
Very good.
But it was Van Buren,
Sure.
and it would have been
Near 40th?
40. It was right off of 40th.
Sure.
42 something, maybe.
Okay. Very good. I was just over there today with the mayor.
Oh.
With Don.
Okay.
And he was showing me around where it came through, so that was probably the most destructive corner from the sounds of it.
And my neighbor also, their child was killed. Ensing.
Ensing, yes.
A little boy, 5 years old.
Sure. So we're to the point where you're under the table.
Yeah, well, then we were lifted up. I was holding the youngest child. I don't know what happened. We just couldn't hang him onto him.
Yep.
And I just went through the air, whirling around, and things were hitting me on all sides. And when I landed, it was in dirt. And my husband laid right next to me, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But both the children were gone.
Okay.
And the 3-year-old came walking toward me, crying, "I want my daddy, where's my daddy?" And I let him lay by his dad, even though he looked absolutely awful, and I knew he was gone.
Yeah.
Because his head was cut badly, and he had a pool of blood. It was really bad.
If there's anything you don't want to talk about, you just don't do it, okay?
Yeah, but I let that child lay by his dad because I didn't know what else to do.
Sure.
And I don't think he realized how bloody and all it was, because he never mentioned it ever. And I went to look for my other little boy, who was 17 months, and I finally couldn't go anymore. I collapsed. And then neighbors came, and just before I collapsed, the Dykstra neighbor was there, and he said, "Who are you?" He didn't know who I was, because I was so beat up. And my hair was, instead of being sort of blonde, was black.
Yeah.
It looked, the nurses in the hospital said it looked like a bird's nest. That's how, you know,
Yeah.
just got all that muck.
So which hospital did you go to? Do you
I went
know?
to St. Mary's Hospital. They were going to take me in the trunk of a car. They were going to put me in there, and then a man who had been in the civil service had training in that. He was from Ohio. He was a salesman, and he happened to come by. And he said, "Don't you put that lady in a trunk. I think she has a broken back." And he said, "We have to get a door." So they went around and they found a door, probably from our house or whose house.
Sure.
And they laid me on that and pushed me in the back of his, he was a salesman and he had kind of like a station wagon. He
Sure.
pushed me in the back there.
Yeah.
And then they stopped at Dr. Hager's corner. They said, "Everybody stops at Dr. Hager's corner and he tells you if he can help you, then you go to the gym." And he had the school gym, and they had nurses there.
Sure.
But he said, "You have to go to the hospital." And I said, "I want to go to Zeeland because that's where my parents were." And he said, "Zeeland is full. You have to go to St. Mary's."
Sure.
So that's where I went. But years later, he told me, "You know, I lied to you that night." He said, "Zeeland wasn't full. I don't think it was full yet,
Yeah.
but I knew you needed more help
And
than that
that's-
little hospital could give you."
Yeah. That's wonderful.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
He cared enough
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Hager, is his house still there today? Is
Yes.
it 36th and Van Buren? Is that
Yeah.
where that is? Very good. I think Don
Yeah.
showed me that today. So.
Yeah, probably did. The garages come off of 36th, but the front of the house
Yeah.
faces Van Buren.
Yep, that would
right?
be it.
Mhm.
Wow, quite a story. And again, if you don't want to speak of things, just say so. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. But she had mentioned at the meeting the other night that you were pregnant when you went through this.
I was pregnant, and when I didn't think I was so badly hurt, but when I got in hospital, they decided that I wasn't doing very well,
Yeah.
and my blood pressure was very low. They started giving me blood right away and they left the cup on, and I know that nurse came in there all the time trying to take my blood pressure. And I found out later that my parents got there about 2 o'clock in the morning. They had heard about it, and that a family had been killed, or a man and his son, and they somehow knew it was us, and they came to look for us, and they found me they'd gone to several hospitals.
Sure.
And they said that there weren't visiting hours then, but they would let them in to see me because they said I probably wouldn't live through the night anyway. And I'm here today.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful. The Lord has been very good to me.
Yes.
And I've been doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
I had a bad knee. They thought maybe my knee cap was crushed. And they said if that had happened, I would not walk again. But it was just bad, it hurt. I had a broken ankle, and I had a broken hand that they put a pin in, and I had 2 broken vertebrae in my back.
So you did have a problem with your back after
Yeah.
all. Very good. So
Yeah, I did, and that's why they couldn't put a cast on me. So I had to lay flat in them
Sure.
for 10 weeks. They if they wanted to roll me over, it took a couple nurses, so they'd roll me like a log, so my back didn't bend. They said because I was pregnant, they didn't want to put a cast on because they didn't know about expandable casts.
Yes.
I was about 4 months along, and they also said since I had a cast from my toes to my groin that they don't usually put that much cast on a person.
Right.
So, and then somebody had to, my friends were
Sure.
just, my friends and family were just absolutely wonderful. They came and they fed me, they read the Bible to me, they just encouraged me in all kinds of ways.
So
I had lots of I mean, God was really, really good to me.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because what we want to do too is go to the Christian schools, and
Oh,
I personally would like to use some of the material we have in the churches. So I, by all means, would encourage you to speak about your faith and how that got you through it.
well, it did. I mean, on the way to the hospital, I thought, how could God have taken Bill, who was a teacher in a Christian high school, taught Bible.
Yeah.
They had a shortage of teachers, and I was this. People laugh at this, but I was shy.
Yeah.
My neighbors said you finally came out of your shell years later.
Yeah.
But I was a shy kind of person.
Sure.
And I thought, what can I do? And in the hospital, I lay there alone in that room a long time, and I kept reciting the answer to the Heidelberg Catechism, the first one, what is your comfort in life and in death? And I thought, I always thought about that in terms of death, and now I had to think of it in terms of life.
Yeah.
You know, because I wanted to live for my son.
Yeah.
And then I remember I knew a lot of Bible verses, and I knew a lot of the Psalms. I had to learn those when we were young.
Sure.
And I, if you had said, you know that Psalm, I probably wouldn't have. All these Psalms just came to my mind, and I was saying them out loud.
Yeah.
And when my parents came at 2 o'clock, my dad was so relieved that I told them that Bill and Steve were killed, and that they didn't have to tell me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, just to hear you reciting those Bible verses was such a comfort.
Yeah, I bet. Wow.
And that's really what I think my faith really helped me through.
Yeah.
God has been very good to me, very faithful to me.
Yeah.
I really.
I can tell. I see it in your face.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's good. I hope it shows.
It does show. It does show. Thanks for speaking about that.
I don't think I could have gone through that without, I mean, my friends came and prayed with me, and in the hospital later, they put me in a ward, and the lady next to me was, she was a Christian, but her family were not.
Okay.
And she would tell me how jealous she was, because everybody who came to visit me almost read scripture, prayed,
Yeah.
or came to help me to feed me.
Yeah.
Because I mightn't even lift my head up.
Wow.
And she, so I just think how blessed I was.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Now, I had another question here, it just slipped my mind, but, oh yes. Were you a member of a local church at the time, and what was that church?